Just trying.
Got it?
Hit it.
Okay. So I think it's good to do this once or twice a year. We try and bring a variety of speakers in to talk about different things. I know last week we had Nathan Zimmer, right?
Yeah.
From Williams
Chamber.
Chamber, talk about kind of growth in the area, job prospects in the area, things like that. But we try and sort of mix it up. But this is, this is my attempt at sort of putting together kind of it's 30,000 foot level, but kind of the blocking and tackling around kind of doing your job search, right? And kind of I've broken this into four parts, so you'll have to listen to me for the next 4 weeks. Just to kind of lay out kind of soup to nuts a process to sort of figure out what you want to do and to kind of go out there and find it. So this is what I've called your transition journey. And I do like to think of transition as a journey, whether it's that here, I'll kind of go to the first slide and think of it, as kind of a roadmap, right? Like I've got up here, or you can think of it as, whatever, sailing across the, whatever mental picture you have in your mind for taking a journey. But that's the way I sort of think about, transition. And so if you think about, you're going to sort of take this voyage across the sea or something, there are, the sort of steps involved are you got to sort of prepare for your journey, right? You got to get ready. You gotta figure out where it is that you want to go. You got to sort of, assemble your toolkit. You got to sort of build your boat, build your ship, your car, whatever. You got to figure out your course, how to get from point A to point B, and then you got to get there, right? And so that's kind of how I think about, the transition process. And so tonight we're going to talk about the sort of first two, which is what I call kind of getting grounded, which is really kind of, I think some of it's sort of mental preparation. Some of it's just sort of key tenets to keep in mind as you think about sort of preparing yourself for transition. And then we'll dive into sort of choosing your destination, kind of figuring out what it is you want to do with your life. And what I think is a fairly practical way to think about that. Okay. So, all right, so let's get grounded. Before we start, these are kind of 5 key tenets that I think are really important when you start to think about transition. So my first tenet is compound interest is better than motivation, right? And so, I've got this, I don't know if any of you guys have read any David Goggins. I find him wildly entertaining. But he's got the quote up here, motivation is crap. Motivation comes and goes. When you're driven, whatever is in front will get destroyed. And so what I mean by this is, compound interest, the way I define compound interest, it's consistently executing kind of routine tasks every day. It's that sort of, if anybody's read like Duhigg's The Habit Loop, right? It's that consistently doing the things that you need to do on a day in and day out basis, whether you really sort of feel like it or not, right? Like it's easy to sort of, motivation is like, it's easy to, listen to a song or see a movie or whatever, and you get all amped up and motivated to do something. That's pretty fleeting, right? To me, what's most important is to sort of set in place a system of habits that you're going to do, on a daily, weekly basis that are important to your job search. And then making sure you do those kind of whether you feel like it or not, right? And over time, I call it compound interest because it really adds up, right? It's a little bit every day, but it really does compound on itself. Like, if you send 5 cold emails a day to potential, employers or somebody you want to network with, whatever. I mean, it's not a whole lot, but if you do that for 2 months, you've sent 300 emails out, right? You do 5 networking meetings per week. In 6 months, you'll do 130 meetings. Last time I went through transition, I kept a chart. I can't remember exactly how many it was, but I think I had coffee with about 160, 175 people, right? And I didn't do that in a week. I didn't do that in 3 weeks, but I was in transition for about 7 months. And over the course of 7 months, you make it a point to try and meet with 2, 3, 4 people a week. Eventually you've met with 170 people who know you, who hopefully like you, who know your story, know what you're looking for. You get that many feelers out and things start to happen for you. So, to me, it's researching companies, it's sending, cold emails to make contacts, and then it's having coffee with people, to make those human connections and tell your story to folks are probably the three most important things that you can be doing. But again, it's making sure you do it on a consistent basis. Don't get all excited. Don't walk out of here like I'm amped up, I'm ready, and do 5 tomorrow, and then do none on Wednesday, none on Thursday, maybe 2 next week, right? It's like set a goal. I'm going to do this every day, and make yourself do it. So that's number one. How do I move it? Move it forward. Oh, I have to go down here. No, I can do it from a keyboard, but anyway. Okay, so tenet number 2 is transition is a time for honesty and introspection. There really aren't any shortcuts. You've got to be just honest with yourself, what's important to yourself. The biggest mistakes that I've ever made career-wise, or at least when it comes to sort of the jobs that I've taken and taken jobs that I ultimately weren't a very good fit for me, is when I kind of lied to myself about, either something that was important to me, or I'm like, well, I think I'd like that, even though kind of in my core heart of hearts, I knew, I'm really not going to like doing that, right? So again, I'm not telling you what to like or not to like, but you really do need to sit down and kind of think through some of the things we talk about tonight. I don't think you're going to find your calling at the end of a 20-question BuzzFeed quiz. You just don't. I think it takes some real time and energy to actually figure it out. But be honest with yourself. Be honest with what's important to you. The Stockdale paradox: acknowledge harsh realities. This is tenet number 3. So this was the Stockdale paradox is you must retain faith that you will prevail in the end, regardless of the difficulties, and at the same time you must confront the brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. This was coined by James Stockdale, who was an admiral in the Navy. He was a POW in Vietnam. This paradox was sort of made famous in the book Good to Great, written by Jim Collins. But I think this really perfectly encapsulates kind of the mindset that you have to have during transition. There are harsh realities that some of us face. If you're over 50 years old, right? There is age discrimination. It's a reality. It's out there. It exists. It's a harsh reality that you have to face. But I am a huge believer that if you maintain faith that you will land where you're supposed to land and keep pushing forward, you will get there in the end. So I'm just a huge proponent of kind of embracing this paradox as you go through your transition. And by the way, if anybody has questions or whatever, stop me, because I know I do tend to just kind of get rambling. Number 4 is think like an entrepreneur. I think some of you may have heard me mention this, over the last few weeks. But Elizabeth Allen she spoke to us one time. She's written, I think, a couple of books kind of around transition. The difference between being unemployed and an entrepreneur is having something to sell. And so, what I really encourage people to think of, whether you're interested in being a, freelance or consultant or whatever, think of your search that way. When you're communicating with potential employers, think of it that way. What is the value that you can bring? If you had to knock on the door of this company and convince them to hire you as a consultant, what is it you would say you would do for them, right? What is the value you would bring? As opposed to necessarily thinking, well, here's the job that I want. No, what is it that you can do for me? What problem do you know that or think that we probably have that you could solve? I think that's just it's a great mindset, and it's a great sort of mental exercise to go through kind of throughout your search process to, as you're talking to potential employers, really, if you're talking to people that you're networking with, right? Like, here's what I'm really good at. Here's what I can help people with. And that may just, you never know, light bulb may just go on. Actually, hey, I have a friend who has a company and they're struggling with this exact issue right now. Why don't I put you in touch with them? So think like an entrepreneur. And then last, I try not to be too soft, too cheesy. I am a big fan of the blocking and tackling, but self-care is key. transition, it's the old, adage, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Do take care of yourself. I will say, I think transition, it's a time that is, it's a dangerous time, right? It is a time when a lot of negative habits can creep into your life, but it's also a time when you can develop positive habits, right? And so just very much encourage people, take care of yourself, avoid creating bad habits. I mean, I remember when I went through transition, I gained a bunch of weight just because I was just always around the house, and I could, and I would kind of work from the kitchen, and, you're just always in the kitchen. So you're always in the pantry, and, just stuff like that. Just, again, try and avoid it. But just, definitely make time for yourself, whatever it is that helps you relieve stress, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, whether it's just getting out and taking a 10-minute walk every day, whatever it is. It's up and down, and it's a roller coaster. So do make sure that you take care of yourself. Otherwise, you drive yourself crazy. All right. So in review, these are my kind of 5 tenets to sort of build on as you think about it. So compound interest, be honest, the Stockdale paradox, think like an entrepreneur, and take care of yourself. All right. So from there, now we got to figure out, before you can begin your journey, you got to figure out where you're going, right? I mean, it's pretty simple, but much more complicated than that when you're trying to figure out what it is you want to do with your life. So I consider, it's this sort of destination of finding your purpose, right? And I've thought a lot about this sort of, this idea of your purpose, of your calling, what it is. There's different people think about it different ways, but ultimately I've kind of arrived at this sort of model that I think makes a lot of sense. And I think ultimately what you're trying to find is your sort of purpose, or your career purpose, if you will. And I think that is it's the Venn diagram. It's the intersection of your calling, which is essentially, in my mind, it's the work that God puts you here on earth to do. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of trying to figure that out. So to me, that's your what. And then you hear people talk about your why. And to me, the why, it's your values. It's your value system. It's what's important to you. It's what you value, whether it's your family, whether it's, helping others, whether it's money. I mean, there's no shame in money. It's what you value. And it's when the two intersect together that I think you really find something from a career standpoint that is going to be ultimately fulfilling for you, that's going to sort of meet your needs. So let's jump into, so I consider the purpose, it's what you do and why you do it. All right. So now let's talk first about what. The Stephen King quote, if God gave you something you can do, why in God's name wouldn't you do it? So let's talk about it. So the best framework that I've found for thinking about this is this Japanese concept of the ikigai. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the ikigai. It's obviously a Japanese word, so maybe it's a little funny sounding. But I really do think that this is a phenomenal model to think about sort of this concept of what it is you were put on earth to do. And so the ikigai, the concept of it is, again, it's this sort of 4-way Venn diagram of it's what you love, something that you love to do. It's something that you're good at. It's something that benefits other people. And it's ultimately something that you can be paid for. Right. And so there are, different things that fit into those buckets. That, there are definitely things that you love, but maybe you're not particularly good at. For me, this would be guitar, right? Like, I love the guitar, and I've tried to teach myself many, many times how to play it, but I'm really just not very good at it. And I sure as heck couldn't be paid for it, and it sure doesn't benefit anybody when I play it. Anyway, but it's trying to sort of find that sort of center, and we'll talk a little bit more about each one of these. We kind of move through this. So, what you love, understanding your ikigai, really starts with the revisiting what you love. So, some questions you can ask yourself as you sort of think through this process is, make a list of activities, topics, subjects, industries, clubs, things that you've been deeply interested in, right? What drew your interest when you were a kid? What did you enjoy doing when you were a child? What do you like doing in your spare time? Focus on activities and things that you're interested in that provide a sense of fulfillment. And what about them provides a sense? And then look back on your career. I guess everybody in this room, I know we kind of put this out there tonight as, I think this can be a good framework for folks who are just starting their careers, but it looks like everybody in this room is fairly mid-career. So look back on your career. What are the roles that you've really enjoyed, and what about them did you really enjoy? I think is a good way, practical way to sort of think about what you love in a professional kind of context. So what are you good at? Core to the Ikigai is what something that you're good at. So a way to sort of think about that framework, look inside and outside of your career and ask yourself the following. What are your skills and weaknesses? What skills have you always been given high marks in your reviews? What weaknesses have you always had identified? What do people ask you for help with, right? What tasks bring you a sense of fulfillment? And what tasks do you work on where you just really want to do a good job versus like, hey, I'm just trying to get this done and over with, right? I think that those are some good questions to kind of frame up what it is that you're ultimately pretty good at. What can you be paid for? In order to sort of make a purpose out of your work, you've got to be able to earn a living at it. So, think about being paid for your skills. You can ask the following questions. What are the most valuable skills that you currently have? Sit there, make a list of them. So somebody's going to pay you for what you're good at. Score them both on the value that they provide, but also in the enjoyment that you have in them. What jobs and services can you apply those skills to? Are you good enough at any of those skills to use them professionally? What could you do to enhance and improve those skills, make yourself more marketable? And how do those skills align with some of the fast growing areas, within the economy, where you hear of people, hiring. And then kind of lastly, what benefits others? Work that is purposeful will ultimately benefit others and help the world. So, what are some of the fastest, growing industries, areas, companies in your area? I mean, generally those are ones that are providing some, significant benefit to others. What's a problem that you constantly see in the world that pollution? Yeah, go ahead. Somebody have a question?
I hope I'm muted.
Oh. Okay, I think maybe just mute. Yeah, there we go. Is there something that inspires you with the work that they do, or someone that inspires you with the work that they do? And is there similar work that you could be doing? Could you provide, customers that you have served in a prior role with a better solution? And ask yourself if you have enjoyed your prior roles more, if you could have seen a tangible benefit to the work that you're doing. So again, just all sort of questions to sort of think through benefits that you could be, or what could be benefiting others. And so again, obviously I went through that quickly, and it's this is the type of thing that you could spend a lifetime almost, kind of thinking about. I think the key really is ultimately trying to move yourself towards the middle of this. I don't think, and this is what I was looking for earlier, things that you're good at, that you love, are really, that's sort of a passion, right? Things that benefits others that you love, that's essentially a mission. If you can be paid for it and if it benefits others, it's a vocation. And if you're good at it and you can be paid for it, it's a profession, right? And so, most of us are probably kind of in here. And so to me, it's figuring out ways, whether it's through, the industry that you're working in, or, finding new ways to teach and mentor or something people, at work, if that's, important to you. But it's finding ways to sort of bring a level of passion and mission into this down here, right? Because we've all probably figured this out to some degree, right? I mean, we figured something out that we can be paid for. We're probably fairly good at it if we've been doing it for, gotten somebody to pay us for it for, most of us have probably been working for 20 plus years, right? So again, it's trying to figure out how to move to the middle. So, an interest that you have, a natural talent, create passion. How can you sell it to others? An area or cause that you love that helps others, creates a mission. How can you be paid for it such that you can, both earn a living and further develop your skills? Something that provides a service and pays as a vocation. How can you develop greater interest and skills for the role that you have? A talent that is marketable, makes for a solid profession, but is it something you enjoy? Can you move your profession closer to what? So, I just kind of close this section by just saying, understand, be realistic. I think when you talk about the ikigai kind of in the abstract, I mean, sure, we all want to have a career that we love and we get up every day and it's just, it's all sort of, nothing but passion and enjoyment and kumbaya. But I think there's a reality that, you're not going to love every day at work, and you're always going to have to do work that you don't like. And every job probably includes some duties or responsibilities that are just stuff that you just don't like. Right. And so, again, when I think of the ikigai, it's an ideal that you're working towards, that you'll probably never fully hit that bullseye, but that's okay. And it's all about trying to work yourself to that middle. And so, thinking of your ikigai as an ideal and what you're working towards, and just think about, what trade-offs are you sort of willing to make? How can you put together a long-term plan to transition to it? What conflicts exist between your current profession and sort of your ikigai? How can you build your skills and opportunities over time? Is it realistic? I mean, is there something that is a side hustle? You're like, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much right in the bullseye, but it's like, I'd have to start that from scratch. So could you start it as a side hustle and sort of build it up? And then I think it is helpful. What's an aspirational work ratio? I mean, because again, you're probably not going to like everything that you do, but is it like, okay, I like 80% of it and 20% of it's or is it 70-30? I think it's, reasonable to kind of think through things from that standpoint. So that's the what. So again, kind of back to this, this concept of finding your purpose is your calling, and essentially the what, and then the why is your sort of values. So let's think through, kind of how to defining a value system. So your value system is unique to you. And again, this kind of goes back to this concept of honest introspection. There's areas below that may potentially feed into your value system, but they may not. So these are just ideas, right? I mean, I can't tell you what's important to you or not, but providing for one's family, self-discovery, creativity, serving others, improving lives of your community, creating a tangible work product, leaving a legacy, financial security, title, prestige, compensation, benefits, financial resources, working for a company that's has a good culture, that has good integrity, that provides some sort of social benefit to the world. Again, I'm not saying these are mine. I'm not saying these should be yours. These are just examples of kind of your value system. And kind of, I think it's a good exercise to just maybe sit down and just start to list out your values without necessarily ranking them or thinking too much about them. And then kind of the next exercise is really sort of fitting them together. Because your values don't always properly align with each other, right? There will be conflicts within your values, right? You may have a value and a desire to, provide a certain, lifestyle from your family, right? While at the same time you have a desire for, to work for a particular type of company or to have a particular work-life balance, right? So it doesn't always sort of fit together just perfectly. But I think ultimately what you have to do is you've got to sit down and you've got to sort of write out the values that you have, and you have to sort of start to rank order them, and you have to kind of figure out how it is that you fit them together into this sort of puzzle. so that you can ultimately sort of say, here's what's important to me. And ultimately land on this kind of, a workable value system, right? So ultimately your values come together into a cohesive system that aligns with your work and your working environment and what you do. So again, thinking about, the risk and financial security, how important is the opportunity for growth? How important is to you feel like you're serving a greater good? How does it interact with your faith? You feel the need to work for like a faith-based organization? How important is it for you to leave some sort of a legacy in the work that you're doing? And how does it impact your family? Right? How do you think about balancing sort of the work-life balance versus the financial needs and all of that? And again, not telling anybody what to think is important or is not important. But when I kind of made the question or comment earlier that it takes honesty and it takes some time and real introspection to kind of go through this, this is kind of what I'm referring to, right? I mean, you're not going to do a BuzzFeed quiz and have it spit out here's your purpose in life, because you really need to think through these things and what's really important to you, I think, in order to sort of figure it out. And so, yeah, putting it all together is ultimately this sort of ikigai concept overlapped with the value system. And I know that it feels like a lot, right? And so again, this is flying at 30,000 feet, and this is a, whatever, hour-long, a little bit less than an hour-long sort of presentation. But, ultimately, I think these are two great sort of frameworks to think about, figuring it out, what it is that's important to you, what it is that you're good at, what the kind of work that you're called to do, and finding a real sort of purpose in work. And so then it's like, okay, well, great, Jay, but then like, what do I really do with that? Like, this is, to me, where it all kind of comes together, the final step is really to sort of translate that what and why into a definable sort of target position, right? And it really is a combination of the role that you want to be in, the industry that you want to be in, and the company that you want to work for. And that's not necessarily the specific company, but the role really is the job title, it's the function, it's the position, the attributes, it's essentially what you want to do. And so that's a little bit more of the what, sort of the ikigai side of it. The industry that you want to work in, again, that's a little bit more of the what, but starting to sort of get into the values. And then the why is more the industry that you want to work in and the type of company that you want to work for, right? And so again, it's not necessarily the specific company, but I do think a lot of that sort of value system ultimately kind of, rubber meets the road in the type of company that you work for, whether it's a big company, a small company, whether it's, a startup, whether it's a mature company. Because look, I mean, if providing for your family and having great benefits and all of that type of stuff is really, really at the top of your value chain, then probably working for a big company that pays well, that has great benefit packages and all of that, it'd be a very good fit for you, right? Versus, I really want to feel like, I'm impacting the world and I'm changing, something, and I'm going to work every day and I'm having an impact. Then, that company's probably, and I say company broadly, that company may be more of like a not-for-profit, right? So again, a lot of this sort of value system is going to be defined in the company. But that's ultimately what you're trying to boil this down to, is what's the job that I'm looking for, what's the industry that it's in, and what's the type of company that I'm looking for, right? And that's ultimately, that's your destination. That's where you're trying to get. And I know it's multiple destinations because you're not just focused in on one specific job and one specific company. Or I would tell you not to, because that's you're putting a lot of eggs in one basket. But that's ultimately what you're really trying to boil it down to, right? Is I want to be a director of marketing at a mid-size faith-based company and in consumer products, right? Or whatever, it's just an example. But I think ultimately that's what you're trying to boil it down to, such that you can then go and kind of boil the ocean for what those opportunities are. And that's really kind of it. So, for next time, or just, over the next week or so, be helpful to think about, work through the questions posed in the presentation, and the components of the Ikigai. Think about your current role, your most recent roles. Where would you place those in the Ikigai? How would you think about it? Think about your most recent roles, and what could you have done about those jobs to move them closer to the center, right? If you were back in that role and you had ultimate power over that role, what could you have done to make it better? Start thinking about your ideal role. What's the role? What's the level, the title, the industry, the environment, the working environment? And spend some time revisiting your values, what your ideal job would be, would have to be true in order to align with your value system. Be realistic. Think about the compromises that you're going to have to make and are willing to make, and begin sort of translating that what and why into those specific roles. On the value side, list as many of your values as you can. Think about jobs that you've liked, companies you've worked for that you've enjoyed. What about those environments or roles do you think aligned with your values? Or if there were jobs that you didn't like, what about those jobs didn't align with your values? Or is that a significant reason why you think that you didn't like the jobs? Rank your current values, sort of, what are your top 5? What are kind of the biggest conflicts that you might have between those? And think of ways that you might sort of be willing to kind of compromise on those to kind of get everything to sort of fit together. And ultimately kind of land as your kind of top 5 or 6. And then again, I think it's a helpful exercise to just write out what's that ideal role? What does it look like? What level is it? What will you be getting up and doing every day? And then what type of company, what industry is it in, and what type of company is it in? Questions?
Anybody online?
I've done this 3 times and I still have the stock. What's your company's name out there? It's embarrassing. But anyway, questions? Speechless.
Is some of the stuff's posted online?
This should be, but I'll go ahead.
It
and
is.
post it.
Okay. If you in the interim, it'll be the presentations are in the 2022 Zoom meetings folder, and the files are in the CTSG presentations 2022. He originally did this 5-part series 2 years ago. But we'll also start a 2024 folder, maybe this week.
Yes. It's only May almost. Yeah. But
Can you give the website again?
the career transition, yeah, it's bumc.net/career. And that's singular career. If you put in careers, it will send you into cyberspace. If you can't find it for some reason, you can also just go to the BUMC website, and it's under the caring, sort of there's caring, and then
Do a search on career.
yeah, and then it'll drop down to it. But you can just go direct to it with the career.
The link that's on the email.
Is it not working?
It could be user error on my part. One of the presentations doesn't look like
Updated the presentations.
any presentation.
They haven't been.
Oh,
Jay and I have had personal challenges for the last year, and very serious personal challenges. So it's not. But these are in the 2022 folder.
Yeah, these are in 2022, and we will put it on our to-do list to get the 24 stuff in there. But
Okay.
you're probably right that it hasn't been.
Mhm.
Yes, we both had to take a leave of absence in 23, and I don't think the folks that were kind of filling in for us updated anything on there. But we'll make a point to
We
get
tried.
to doing that again.
Yeah.
it looked like my old presentations, the last thing I could find was like March.
But even, yeah.
March of 23. That sounds about right.
Okay.
Is
That's
that
when-
when your wife?
That's when my wife had some serious health issues starting in March of 23, and that I was kind of gone from March until the end of the year.
If you want to give me your email address, I can send it to you.
Okay.
Um,
I was just gonna ask you about some of these authors, the Habit Loop, do you know who wrote that?
Habit Loop is Charles Duhigg, isn't it? Pretty sure. I don't want to tell you wrong.
Yeah, but if you go into the CTSG
Yeah,
presentations,
it's Charles Duhigg. That's Jim
Jim
Collins.
And did, David Goggins write anything?
Oh yeah, he's got it's not, yeah, he's got two. It's like Never Hurt Me, and his is, as much as he says motivation's crap, it's kind of more motivation sort of stuff. I mean, I'll listen to it while I'm running, but yeah, and it's not safe for work. It's, you know, he likes to use the F word, but it's pretty entertaining, and he's got an amazing story. Yeah, so I enjoy him.
Any other questions? Anybody on Zoom?
If I will say on
Yes.
books, I know I didn't mention it here, but I think the best sort of like transition book, sort of taking stock book that I've read is there's a guy named John Acuff. He actually lives here locally, and he's written like 7 or 8 books, but he does one. He is, I think it's the second or third book. It's called Do Over. And it is just a great kind of step by step of a lot of kind of what we're talking about here, where you're just sort of taking stock of what you've done in your career and who you've met in your career and all of that, and kind of formulating a plan to, you know, kind of move on to the next thing. So I would highly recommend his book as well.
Did somebody online had a question?
Yeah, I'm in the handouts and presentations folder, and I was looking. Is it the volunteer list? Is that where I go to find someone to help me with
Yes.
my resume?
Yes.
That is, yeah.
Yeah, there's a spreadsheet in there with a bunch of about 24 people who'd be willing to help you with almost anything.
Okay. Is it okay?
You find it?
Yeah. Is there a specific person that I should go
Over
to?
to the right. Now, to the right, it talks about people who might be willing, or who are kind of practiced at helping people with resumes. Towards the right, it talks about what we can each do.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. This is how. Okay. I'm good now. Okay. Thank you. I could not.
Sure.
For some reason, I could not find that. I appreciate it.
No worries.
Volunteer list, I think Cheryl, is her name on there?
Cheryl Davis is Stephen Ministry. Yeah.
That's one of the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's on the list. Anything else? Any
Anything else?
questions? And Jay and I are on the list, so feel free
Yeah.
to reach out to
Feel
us.
free
for
to reach
anything.
out to us. I'm happy to look at folks' resumes, all that. We are. I preface all that. We're more of a teach a man to fish than give a man a fish organization. So I can't write your resume for you, but if you've got something, a working draft, you send it to me. I'm happy to give you feedback. Sure.
No more questions? Well, thanks, folks.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yay, Jay.
Oh yeah. Thanks for everybody online. We'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you've got the master. Okay. I can't. They're all still there.